had a group of people that connected over athletics. We had a group of people that connected over volunteering. And that's kind of how I saw it evolve. It was just, yes, the socialization aspect was there, but it branched into how do we connect people that are new to this community over things that they already like doing. And that was kind of revolutionary for me to understand that that's how people like to connect, not just partying. You know, maybe it's a river cleanup and then beers at lakefront afterwards.
Well, I think that's part of the magic, right? Is that maybe we are a little crazy. But I think it just keeps coming back to like this sense of belonging. Like I think for some of us, we found our people. Like we found this sort of tribe of people who wanted to explore, who wanted to experience, who wanted to push things in a different level, but also wanted to like build each other up. I know for me, one of the most beneficial parts of being a part of this community has been finding people who are empowering me across the state. You know, and I think for those people, the people who really kind of dove in and were looking for something a little bit bigger than just events, something a little bit deeper than just, you know, a lunch and learn or, you know, a coffee and conversation, who were looking to build up their communities through connecting people, we found that connection together.
Nobody's as interested in joining an association anymore. They want to join something that's going to do something. And I think that's what NEWaukie's been able to do, and that's how they've been able to transition how people view Milwaukee compared to today than they did 10 years ago.
People were looking for something to grab onto, and along comes NEWaukee and says, hey, you kind of snuck in with this. It's fun, it's party, it's meeting new people that share those interests, and then you started to, you know, strategically inject, oh, maybe we should go to this part of the city that people don't go to for whatever reasons or perceptions, and you started breaking down all these barriers. And the challenge was, how do you monetize that? And I think you guys have come a long way to figure out, you know, not only prove out your value proposition, but figure that out on that path.
You know, as an event goer or as an initiative, like attendee, like you walk out of a place feeling different than you ever have before, and you're not sure why, but you know you want it again. Mm-hmm. You could have a room of 400 people, and each and every one of those people are having a different personal experience in the same environment, and that's because of design. It's not just, you know, event planning. In fact, I don't think it's event planning at all. There's a design of the culture, of the content, and kind of a hypothesis from the designer's standpoint of, well, how do we think this is going to go? And if trends, you know, point this way, then what if we tweaked it this way? Would it result in this? And I mean, you knock it out of the park. And with the design comes this like self-selecting following.
But also the importance for like the vibrancy and actual health of our community. Right. And having this stance that culture is important to us, and the fact that the culture that we aim to create is connecting people to each other, feeds into that problem, feeds into solving that problem. It creates a solution that is obviously there, that everyone in our state's empowered to do. We're all empowered to create culture. There's no prerequisite for it, right? There's no degree needed, there's no specific skill needed. There's just a drive and a passion and a heart.
NEWaukee's had just a tremendous impact on making Milwaukee cool and relevant and accessible and connected.
One of the things I've seen remain relatively consistent, and the needle might be moving, I'm not sure, but a lot of times in Milwaukee, the scarcity mindset, which is something we talk about, there's both real and perceived scarcity in Milwaukee. And I think specifically in the cultural space of Milwaukee, so people making art, or creative people, a lot of times there's a real scarcity of resources, a real scarcity of dollars there. So in some ways, I think the result of that is status and ego, and being and receiving opportunities is sort of the currency. Mm-hmm. So when you start picking and choosing, even if you're not like you're not putting everyone on a list and saying these are the best, so I will put them in my Milwaukee showcase, people feel that way. So that's an interesting thing. Like if you do something in Milwaukee and you do like a showcase of great whatever it is, any cultural thing, the folks who aren't a part of that, a lot of times are going to feel like, why am I left out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think our solution was to just keep showing up and to keep inviting people to play despite their critique.
No, these wild critiques of you guys. No, I mean, I talk to you guys in the midst of sometimes you guys like catching it. And what I appreciated is like, you had emotion, you had reaction, but like at the end of the day, I mean, like maybe you're just gluttons for punishment. Like you always like at the end were like, I would actually like to like absorb this. Like I want to talk to that person, or I want to engage with this, and not dismissing it as that person's just throwing shade because they suck or they're jealous or whatever.
And at the root of everything you do is a night market, whether it's just a social or bring people together for dinner to talk, there's a real concrete reason underneath it. You're trying to do good a little bit at a time. That you understand that you can't solve the whole problem all at once, but that the little bits all along, you're going to make an impact.
But what I always describe NEWaukee, I always say they do things. They get things done. They create things. They're not like a typical association that's just hosting learning opportunities or luncheons or social hours. You do that too, but then you get really involved at a granular level in the community and try to accomplish these things that you set forth. And I think that's pretty impressive.
I remember, I think maybe because of the velocity of our production, feeling like, but I'm still breathing and I'm still laughing, and like we'll find the next thing. And that has become maybe an addiction or a practice, however you want to look at it. That's aesthetic.
Addiction, practice, however you
Aesthetic.
say it.
But this idea that like you actually just, you shouldn't fear the unknown. You should just lean into it with curiosity, because it has always been grander than my wildest expectations.
I mean, that might be one of the reasons you've made it 10 years and you've built the kind of reputation you've had. For better or for worse, our city is a place where like the notches you get in your belt sometimes are from the notches you've taken on your head. Like we love those who suffer and get back up. You know, we love those who are willing to like stick it out. And like, I mean, I've heard people say NEWaukee's not gonna last. They're gonna crumble. And the fact that you guys continued to like take those moments of tension or mistakes that you've made or things that you did that you're like, oh shoot, we could do better. I really feel like you guys have modeled a way of learning that is pretty, I will say, is like not terribly common in Milwaukee. I think people don't understand about you, which is how many times did I bike by while you guys were setting up? And I'm like, hey guys, you're like, it's like windy and you're like, everything's blowing away, or it's hot and you're sweating. I'm like, see you later. I'm like just biking by. This is cool, thanks. And I think the fact that you, like the labor you guys put into stuff, like you're not outsourcing the shit work, you know, like you're not outsourcing the hard stuff. And I think so that even to me, like that's something that's instilled in me, like a respect for you guys. Is just like, not that like, well, maybe I like people who suffer.
I think it's contagious. Like that's one of the things I've found working with this group, is that I'm no longer afraid of the naysayers either. Like going back to my community and going back to this sort of mindset that like I can't induce change or I can't make change. After my years working with you guys, it's faded, even just, I mean, it's completely turned around, where I now have a responsibility to create change because I know it can be done, and I look at my peers doing it, and I'm impassioned and emboldened by what I see us doing as a larger group to go do it back on a smaller level.
And I think what was really interesting out of all that was it started out to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And the problem was West Wisconsin Avenue, where nobody wanted to go at night, had no conception that it was safe, and no activity on it. And so you guys came in with that concept. First it was the overnight tinting experience, which, you know, I'm kind of like Angela sitting there saying, okay, what if it rains at night? What, you know?
Is Julia Taylor going to sleep outside?
No, I'm not going to sleep outside.
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, how are you going to get people to do that?
And so, you know, but it was, you know, but then I think evolving into the night market, which has become like an institutional thing in Milwaukee. Nobody even thinks about the original concept anymore, about activating the street. And I honestly think the night markets have had a lot to do with the revitalization of Wind Avenue.
Totally.
Symphony coming down there, people seeing it as an alive place.
I mean, we did that food prize this year where we thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to do a food tasting event? I think that's really like our premise. Like, let's have people taste some dishes and then someone will win like the best dish. We ran into the guy who won at a deli a couple weeks ago. He took the money and is opening a whole new business with it.
It's
Like,
so
and it's not even
Yeah.
something that we checked up on or to like follow through. Like, just because there's so many things going on, it's like, my God, we changed that guy's life.
Yeah.
Like forever now. He's gonna, whether or not the restaurant succeeds, like he will have like taken the little prize money we gave him and like started down a whole new path.
Well, when you think about the ripple effect of that, right? So like that event created this new space, which is now a new social infrastructure for people to come into. Like people will have their first date there and somebody might propose there. Somebody and their kid might get their breakfast there every day. Like,
Right.
you know, there's all of this that happens because you had a food tasting event and somebody won a prize.
At its core, like people are wanting to feel empowered,
Yeah.
you know? And if you give somebody a platform or, you know, a literal stage for them to stand on and pitch their idea or whatever, show their food or whatever, like, and people vote for it, like you don't have to know any of the people who voted for you, but because somebody voted for you, and you didn't have to win. As long as you know you got a handful of votes, like you feel empowered, you feel validated.
And I think that it really speaks to what I think our state desperately needs more is connection. Like social isolation is such a huge problem in our communities across the country. But there's been a lot of studies recently that have shown like the importance of building social infrastructure, the importance of having these spaces and places and events that are designed to connect people to each other, not just for like good times, which we all love a good time. I mean, Jer more than most of us. But
I think it was always a strategy, like how does it make it feel bigger so it would be more credible?
I don't even know that we thought that. I think we were just so curious, like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I think people thought because it was this constant stream of activity that there was some sort of like funding behind it or something that like was more established than it really was. I mean, it was like 3 kids in the basement of the Grand Avenue Mall, right? Like that is a real story of what actually happened and us just being naive enough or curious enough to keep
They
going.
always
but
talked about NEWaukee as it was like a membership model that had all these people that were making all these decisions together. When it really came down, like I just feel like doing this week. I think the perception, and maybe that's probably our fault for never telling the story at the beginning of who was
But when
involved.
would we have had time to do that? I mean, we were just like in the thick of it.
Like I showed up looking for peers and I ended up finding myself in mentorship roles so much. Not because I'm like in such a huge different place, but I was somewhat farther along in knowing how to run these kinds of projects and knowing how to work political dynamics, you know, like just see these opportunity layers. So a lot of times I felt like with both of you, I was just supporting your processing a lot to know what your options were and to follow that instinct you had around agency. So again, yeah, like 3 people coming together when you have a certain focus and you have maybe because you at some level just wanted to try, but the point is you had enough will to be able to go into existing power dynamics and suggest other options in the form of events, in the forms of how you participate in meetings. Like you just say stuff sometimes. And so I always read you a lot through, again, a culture that sometimes, you know, overly stresses youth culture, but at the same time doesn't really give youth culture sustained agency.
Yeah.
I was just trying to support you to like really learn how to, I mean, we talked about this time, like how is sustainability an actual form of radicality here?
NEWaukee is going to continue to prove the naysayers wrong, and like it can't be done. The night market can't be done. Oh, 10,000 people show up. You know, like it can be done, and it just requires, you know, that drive and that almost like I don't know, like blind ambition. Not necessarily blind ambition, because there's certainly a vision there, but you don't know what you're getting into. You have an idea, and what you think is gonna, you know, be an obstacle ends up being, you know, something that you can just gloss over. It's that other thing that hits you in the face. But like, if there's one company that has the capacity and the like connections and the network to actually change the state of Wisconsin's culture, it's NEWaukee. And it's because you can mobilize what you're doing so well. It's because of all the things that we've already said. I'm excited to see how this group of this generation of individuals who are currently identified as young professionals, or however you want to identify them. I think what the rest of society tends to forget is that this group of people is going to continue getting older and going to continue to evolve and have different, things that draw them to do something, or that piss them off, or whatever. And I think NEWaukee and what NEWaukee is doing is going to continue to evolve with that generation.
It's so easy to have a really crisp and clean mission statement, right? Like, right in black and white, goes on all the materials to change the way people connect. Something that we wrote a couple years ago as a way to like be all encompassing for what all the like myriad of activities we produce. To hear stories that I didn't even know about how we've done that has been so revelatory and gratifying that it's worked. It's not just a mission statement like written on some wall or in some employee handbook. It's a thing that's real that we've actually done.
We had hundreds and thousands of people show up at these art jamborees. Like, people are depending on us as a platform to show their work. That is when it turned for me. It's like, I can't stop creating these experiences for people that obviously need this.
I think we're just getting started.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. Like, it took us a long time to identify what we were doing innately, spontaneously, just for the heck of it. And now that we are conscious of it, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, there are some real social ills here. And if we can be the example, not only of how to solve those here in Milwaukee, but across the country, wouldn't that be, the fullest and best extension of everything we've ever dreamed of?